Hello, and welcome to a new segment I'm gonna call Aaron's Baking Corner. It's gonna be great. So Aaron's Baking Corner is going to be me showing you the ABCs of baking, or I guess of gluten-free baking, because this is where a pretty big divide kind of happens between normal people food and gluten-free food. Because usually, every other recipe that I've shown you is normal in essence. Like every now and then I have to swap out one small thing, but it's usually like a thickening agent. Whereas this is very different because the lack of gluten, which provides like elasticity and I think like structure to baked goods, that's not in there. So I have to kind of go down a few different routes of adding, like in this recipe, technically they ask for like xanthan gum and cornstarch. My flour already has the xanthan gum in it, so I don't need to add that. But like those kind of additions you wouldn't need if you were making the same recipe non-gluten-free. This whole kind of segment also will be similar to what I said a few weeks ago of like, I want to try making recipes for the first time kind of for you guys, and you can see me struggle through that. And with baking, I don't really do a lot of baking on my own. Usually, like if I do, it's like a cake mix from a box or like a pie crust mix already. So it's not what I would say like actual baking. It's not from scratch. Like this is gonna be where I'm adding all the ingredients together, nothing kind of pre-mixed. So I figured what better way to learn gluten-free baking from scratch than to record it for the world to see. It hopefully it's entertaining. You can make this stuff along with me. You don't need to. You could make the gluten-free version that I'm doing and then a non-gluten-free version, eat both, and then you can gloat about how much I'm missing out on. Because from my experience, gluten-free baked goods, there is a difference. But the fact that I haven't had a non-gluten-free baked good in almost 4 years probably will benefit me because I've just forgotten what it tastes like. So this video, in my head I was like, this will be my birthday video because I'm making lemon pound cake, and it counts as a birthday cake if you put a birthday candle in it. You can't tell me anything else. So this was gonna be my birthday cake because like the way that videos are dropping, this will be before my birthday. However, my birthday's at like the end of the week, so it being next week probably would have made more sense. Mostly because Mother's Day is this week, and I kind of spaced on like, oh, I could do a video for that. My plan is to actually do effectively what I would have done for a Mother's Day video next week. And then, so mostly this pertains to Mom, who I'm sure is watching, because she actually texted me about last week's video right before I started filming this. So I have a comment on that hopefully I don't forget about. So Mom, imagine next week's video is on this video, and then this video just put it next week, and then the timeline will make a lot more sense. Also, like I really whiffed it because next week, it's my birthday and essentially like my gluten-free birthday, because I was diagnosed 4 days after my birthday, and so I could have just doubled up on that, doing something fun, but I wasted it. I blame, there's a lot of non-food related things happening this week. Like if you can see, my watch strap broke, and I literally, I think 2 weeks ago, bought a new one, and then this one broke, so I'm getting a replacement from Amazon. I'm not buying another one because that is too short of a turnaround time. And this one I bought from like the actual, like it wasn't like a cheap knockoff, like this was like the actual from Garmin, like, hey, give me a replacement one. And then it just broke. And then also I'm doing like some like home loan class webinar things, because eventually I'm trying to buy a house. So that's a lot of stress, and it just made me not plan these videos to the best of my abilities. But hopefully they're both entertaining. And from last week's video, or I think it was 2 weeks ago. I asked for recommendations. I have heard and wrote down the recommendations, so don't think I've forgotten. Just, you know, this video and then the next one kind of overtook those in priority because they're slightly more, you know, time sensitive. They're related to specific dates. So I figured I'd do those and then I'd make one, if not both. I think there's just 2 recommendations. I'll have to look again, see if there's more. But another thing from last video, I said that enchiladas usually use or use flour tortilla. And my mom texted me and she's like, you do realize that traditionally they're made with corn tortillas. So here's me admitting that I was wrong. And now you guys know corn tortillas are what they traditionally use. And she mentioned that to like help them roll, you just heat them up a little bit. Like you're not cooking them, just heat them, and they'll become more pliable. So now you know, and you're learning from my mistakes that I'm willing to admit. So if I say something in non-factual, infactual, one of those is a real word. I can't speak. You call me out, and I'll admit it. I just have to see the call out because sometimes I miss stuff. I think I've rambled for long enough. Why don't we kind of kick off the video proper by showing you the ingredients. Flour, cornstarch, lemons, eggs, butter, salt, cream cheese, sugar, powdered sugar. So game plan. This, I mean, I like rambling, but the game plan is kind of fun for me because I read the recipe, I write a game plan, but then I try and just remember my game plan for you guys without looking at the plan I made. And it's a fun little memory game. So let's see how much I remember, because there's a few things kind of going on, and there's, you know, mixing certain stuff. So it'll be an interesting one to see if I can remember all of it for. First up is you want to make a flour mix. So that's the flour, the cornstarch, the salt, and some lemon zest. Just kind of want to whisk that up into a small bowl, and then kind of set it aside because we need that later on. Then after that, I use a stand mixer. The recipe says you can use a stand mixer or a hand mixer. I have a stand mixer, so I'm going to use a stand mixer. But in the stand mixer, it's mixing the butter and the cream cheese. And that was like on high for like 5 minutes, so that's quite a while. I just threw that in there while I prepped a few other things. Then add in the sugar and obviously mix that. Then it's the lemon and the eggs, so just kind of dump both of those in there, mix it up. It should be kind of smooth and liquidy at this point. Then we're slowly adding in, well, I slowly added in the flour, but it says like added in 3 parts. But since the mixer's kind of constantly going, I figured if I just gradually added it in, it would be fine. It's just so that you don't get like big clumps of flour in one go. So I gradually did it. Recipe says 3 parts, but I mean, to be fair, I haven't done this before, so that I could have just messed it up right there. We'll find out. And then after that, you want to in this, I then grease the pan. The recipe, like step 1 is like grease the pan. They always do that where it's like step 1, grease the pan and turn on the oven. I'm like, it's like 12,000 steps before I even get to that. Like, why have it there? Anyway, so at this point is when I grease the pan, and I also turned on the oven because it's only 325, so it doesn't take long to heat up. And then after that is to dump the mix into the greased pan, and you want to flatten that out, and then you want to bake it for, it says about 50 minutes. You're gonna periodically check on, so it's not just like throw it in the oven and leave it. And it does mention that you don't want it to like get too dark on the top, so keep an eye, and if it does start getting too dark, put some foil over the top. And then after it's finished baking, then it's gonna take it out, let it cool, and make the glaze while it's cooling, and then put the glaze on top after it's cooled. Eat and enjoy. I think those are all the steps. I mean, it's a lot of things going on, and I think I remembered all of it. It seemed coherent as I was saying it, so there will be a message someplace if I forgot something. So as I stated in the game plan, first step is to kind of make that flour mix. Now that we have the flour mix kind of off to the side, next up is for me, the stand mixer. I'm going to mix the butter and the cream cheese. So now that the butter and the cream cheese are mixed, next is to add in the granulated sugar. Now that the sugar and the butter cream cheese mixture are melded together, we want to add in the eggs as well as the lemon juice. So now that whole mixture is pretty liquidy. To me, it looked super cool. But now the next step is to take that flour mixture that we made in the first step, and we're gonna slowly add that to the liquid mixture that we have. Essentially the batter is complete. Next up is to grease the loaf pan and then put the batter in and then bake it for, I'm doing 30 minutes on the first go, and then I'm gonna check to make sure that, you know, the top's okay, and then I'll probably put like 15 and then the last 5, just to keep an eye on it to make sure it's not doing anything funky in the oven. But a tip for greasing the pan, at least for me, I use the leftover butter wrappers, so I don't throw those away. I keep those, and then I use that because there's remnant butter on there, and I mean that's ideal for greasing a pan. You could also use like parchment paper. I think the recipe, like if you look at the pictures, they use parchment paper, but in this step I'm just blindly following the recipe rather than following the picture of the recipe. I'm sure it'll be fine. There just might be some slight stickage if I, didn't perfectly grease. But the greasing tip, still valid. Like if anything ever has butter and then asks you to grease a pan, just save the butter wrapper. You're good to go. All right, so let's get into that. And then it's just gonna be kind of waiting around for a little bit while it's baking. So me, I'm filming things, but I also did like the dishes and stuff like that. So, clean as you go. The cake is out of the oven. It smells fantastic. I'm gonna set it back down though. So for the cake, it's let it cool, I think for like 15 minutes in the pan, then put it on a wire rack to let it completely cool. I'm gonna try and speed up the process by putting it in front of a fan. Then our next step will be to make the glaze and put it on top. so the glaze is done now. And I mean, it went through some phases of like nothing was happening, and then it started clumping, and then it was like really clumping, and then it just became a liquid. I don't know if that's how it's supposed to happen, but it is now what I would assume is the consistency of a glaze. So let's put it on top of the pound cake that we have and call it a night. I now have the glazed pound cake. It's not the prettiest, but it's not terrible. So I'm excited to try that. I can't really do a score of it because I have never had it before, but I can do it in post. I guess I should give you criteria for giving you the score for it. I mean, so none of this will be based on taste. So the recipe itself, I would say, relatively easy to do. The glaze part tripped me up a little bit there because it's in like a small bowl, and then that wasn't working out. So as you saw, I switched to a bigger bowl, and then it just didn't seem like it was gonna do anything. And then it became something after adding a lot more juice in than the recipe called for. But beyond that, all the rest was pretty smooth sailing. It didn't take too terribly long. I mean, the 50-minute baking is obviously gonna be a decent chunk, but with that incorporated, like for the amount of time that it took me, wasn't too terrible, as always, because you know the definition of insanity. I started late, so it's not, you know, a normal hour to be cooking at, but I kind of knew what I was getting into this time versus previous times when it just kind of got out of hand. I mean, it smelled fantastic coming out of the oven, so I suspect it's going to be good. I'm pretty excited for this. We'll see. I guess one of the big tests is how well will it keep. So, I mean, I feel like we're going to lose points because I'm going to have to put foil over this, and I feel like the foil is going to make contact with the glaze, and that's probably going to mess it up a little bit. But we'll see how quickly it gets stale. So that'd be kind of another factor for the scoring. But you can now guess. I don't even know. I mean, I really like lemon, so I'm hoping it's a 5 out of 5. And the glaze thing I'll kind of dismiss because I think that was just because I had never done it before. I didn't know the magic that would happen. But I'm hoping that this is delicious, and I'm hoping that it keeps well. And I'm hoping for a 5 out of 5. But we'll see what future Aaron says right here. Wow, would you look at that? It's a number between 1 and 5. Is that the number you guessed? It may or may not be the one I guessed. I think that's enough for today. I'm gonna go hopefully enjoy this lemon pound cake for the first time that I've ever made. And hopefully it inspires you to go try something that you haven't made before. Bye, Mom. Still not dead. See ya.